Fasten your seatbelts, because we ain't like no podcast you've ever heard before. We're the rootinest, tootinest, and darkest podcast in America. Well, near darkest at least. And me? Well, I'm musty, I'm dusty, I'm crusty, and I'm about ready to bust. Matisse Van Rossum.
Howdy, I'm Ben Sheets, and can you hear that? If you listen real quiet in the middle of the night, you can hear Tangerine Dream.
I'm listening. Well, hello. I'm Cleveland Mosier, and this is No Country for Very, 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 Very Old Men.
Welcome back, dear listener. We're so happy that you're here, and we're so happy to be here because we're talking about another really good movie. This week was my pick, but I really sort of did my pick for Cleveland.
Thank you.
Because Cleveland has, on multiple episodes of the podcast in the last couple of months, gone off on incredibly long tangents about how he wishes that there was more Western horror.
It's true.
And so I said, well, Cleveland, if you've been hankering for Western horror, then it's time to show you probably the best Western horror film ever made. And that, of course, is Kathryn Bigelow's directorial debut, Near Dark, which has an incredible ensemble cast of Adrian Pasdar, Jenny Wright, Lance Henriksen, Bill Paxton, Jeanette Goldstein, Tim Thomerson, and Joshua John Miller. And, well, Cleveland, did this satisfy your craving for Western horror?
My dude, thank you so much for picking this movie. I really appreciate it. Did it? Oh man, it did. We're hot off of watching it, and I'm just...
Yeah, we just finished like 5 minutes ago.
And it's like I finished a really big, wonderful, tasty meal. I'm so satiated. Yeah, no, I think this one's about good enough to shut me up for a minute. My thirst has been satisfied. I feel quenched. I feel whole. I'm so happy this movie exists. I'm so glad it was made in the 80s. I'm so fucking glad. If any time I get the hankering for Western horror again, I can just watch this movie again. Yeah, this movie exists and it's really good. It exists and
it's existed for a long time.
And it's a banger. Like I was not expecting it to be great. I was expecting it to be a good movie that happened to be exactly what I wanted, and that was going to be enough. But it was fucking awesome. Like it's really well shot. I think it's well written. Fantastic film.
Powerful directorial debut from Kathryn Bigelow. Frankly, I kind of think she peaked with this one. But
I don't reckon I've seen any of her other films.
She did Zero Dark 30,
The Hurt Locker, which was good.
Point Break.
Point Break is the other fantastic one that she's done.
Zero Dark 30 and Hurt Locker are kind of propaganda films.
Yeah,
I would say.
especially Zero Dark 30.
Yes.
It's just straight up CIA propaganda.
Yeah.
I've heard great things about Hurt Locker.
Hurt Locker's pretty...
It's definitely
as a movie, it's pretty good.
I don't think I could take Jeremy Renner seriously anymore in 2021 post Jeremy Renner app.
Yeah, I don't. I don't think so either. But anywho, at least
the Hawkeye.
The Hawkeye
coming soon to Disney Plus.
Man,
coming soon to not my house.
If only that was a Jeremy Renner app exclusive.
I'm kind of surprised Kathryn Bigelow hasn't been tapped to direct a Marvel film yet. It seems like kind of an obvious choice, doesn't it?
I mean, she's already doing CIA propaganda, so no change there.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. But anyway, regardless of where her direction has taken her, we'll always have Near Dark, which is a fantastic little vampire western.
Slash noir?
Slash noir, yeah. A lot of noir vibes. It's a very dark movie. I mean, tonally appropriate, and also for a movie called Near Dark.
I don't know if noir is what I would go with. It's 80s as fuck. Like,
I mean there were noir films made in the 80s.
I know, but it feels like Yeah, I guess so.
Stylistically, it's very noir. Maybe not in terms of like your typical noir detective flick, but in terms of the visual style, it's definitely noir.
Yeah.
So many of the sets are so like drenched in shadow with like really hot bright light silhouetting people coming through the blinds. Like it's
Would you use noir to describe Terminator?
No.
Because
no.
the things I see that I would consider noir in this movie, lighting wise, I see in Terminator as well.
It's been a long time since I've seen the original Terminator.
Yeah, like the way that things are like bathed in shadow, the blue lights, the neon, like it's all.
I definitely see influence of the original Terminator in this. I think James Cameron's influence is definitely visible here, especially in terms of tone and pacing. This movie is
he passed off like half his cast from Aliens to Kathryn Bigelow for this movie.
Basically, yeah.
Got, Jeanette Goldstein, Bill Paxton, Lance Henriksen, all in this movie.
Which is cool because Ben eyeballed Aliens.
On the marquee,
yeah.
In one of the scenes.
Theaters,
it's right about the same time. This came out, I think, a year after Aliens. Aliens came out in '86. This came out in '87. So, when they were shooting this, Aliens would have probably still been in theaters or nearabouts. So that was a fun little. A fun little nod. Of course, Kathryn Bigelow and James Cameron were briefly married after this film. So, there's definitely James Cameron influences on this thing for sure.
James Cameron, 80s James Cameron-y explosions.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, and that's another reason, too. And again, too, like, they're vampires. Like, what's the line from Terminator, Like, they can't be stopped, they just keep coming. It's all very Terminator-y, except they're wearing, like, cowboy clothes. It rules, man. This movie fucking slaps. As an elevator pitch, it's perfect, too. What if you encountered an outlaw group of vampires? Vampire outlaws, really, in 2 words, is all you need. And it makes sense, being out on the run, not being able to come out in daylight, like the vampire lifestyle already kind of matches that of being an outlaw anyway.
Yeah, the West is really like such a perfect setting for a vampire flick. Like I'm kind of surprised that it wasn't really done before this, or at least if it was, I don't have any notable examples. But like, vast stretches between towns, lots of people drifting, all over the place. Easy to sort of blend into the countryside. Like it's really the perfect hunting ground for a group of vampires. As a premise, it's great.
And I have to say, like, Near Dark has the coolest vampires of any movie, in my opinion.
I can agree fully.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of a cliche, hot vampires or whatever, but this was the most effortlessly that's been done, I feel like.
I wholeheartedly agree, and I love vampires. I love vampire stuff. I'm a sucker for, like, that whole goth aesthetic.
These vampires are like a different kind of hot.
They're cool.
They're like they're like crusty.
Yeah.
Like they're
punk, but like proper punk.
Outlaw punk. Yeah. I know the Lost Boys came out the same year as this, which is interesting that both films happened to release at just about the same time. I actually haven't seen The Lost Boys, but
Neither have I, but that's one that comes up a lot when you're frantically Google searching horror westerns.
Yeah, well, it's
it's
another one about like kind of a gang of outlaw like vampires.
Yeah, it's nowhere near as good as Near Dark. As someone who's seen it, I feel like vampire movies come in kind of waves. We get a bunch at a time, and then just they fizzle out for a while.
Everyone gets sick of them.
Yeah. So that totally makes sense that they came out in the same year.
Well, I like in this movie, too, that, like, the word vampire is never said once. They are vampires.
It isn't.
But then they never say vampire, ever. They only say that that he's been bit or I turned him or something.
You know,
but the word vampire is not in the film's lexicon at all.
And it doesn't need to be, right?
No.
Yeah.
Well, no, it doesn't. I mean, you know what it is.
Yeah.
Like,
you know what it is.
the sun burns them. They need blood to stay alive. Like, they're immortal. Otherwise, you know what vampires are. You don't need to say vampires.
Yeah, it's almost like, this is a wretched comparison, but
Oh God, you're really good at making comparisons to things that I hate.
No, but it's like in no, I'm not going to make that comparison. Never mind.
I was gonna say, I swear to God, if you make a Star Wars or
no, it wasn't going to be that
book comparison.
No, it was going to be something totally. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
Oh man, what a bail!
Something not publicly, but it's pretty funny.
That was like shooting a basketball and just whiffing it.
We're gonna cut that.
Nope.
I'm gonna listen to this and be mad.
But also, what I think is interesting in this movie too is that, like, they are vampires, but they don't have a lot of, like, the vampire hallmark. They don't have fangs. They drink a lot of blood.
Well, they do sometimes. There is the one shot of who's the really lively one who's always chewing the scenery?
Bill Paxton.
Bill Paxton. That's a young Bill Paxton?
Yeah.
Holy shit! I didn't realize. That's awesome. Yeah, I guess so. Damn.
Who else can chew scenery like Bill Paxton?
Yeah. Holy shit. He's a lot younger in that scene. Yeah. Sorry that I'm used to seeing him. Yeah, with Bill Paxton, the first shot we see of him, when our protagonist is waking up, he's got fangs.
No, he doesn't.
Are you sure?
Yeah,
I think he just has long incisors.
Yeah, I think it's just his normal canines.
It's
like,
all you need. It looks vampiric.
Yeah, none of them have fangs, and once again, just like the word vampire not needing to be said, like, they don't need to have fangs, and they don't have, like, spooky eyes, or, like, they're not, like, super pale or anything. They just look like regular crusty ass fucking people.
I mean, I think it's one of the best, like, quote, like, realism depictions of vampires I've seen. You know, like, just stripping it down to its core. You know, there's no holy water, there's no garlic or any bullshit like that. They don't fucking sparkle, nothing. It's just, they drink blood and they live forever. And sunlight bad, and that's it.
We see at one point that Lance Henriksen's character has a revolver that has, like, a crucifix, a cross, like, on the handle, on the hilt. So
crosses definitely don't do anything.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, but once again, it's like, you know, they're vampires, but also they're kind of scary because they don't show any of the other hallmarks of vampires. In a lot of vampire movies, it's like, why are you getting near that creepy person who's very obviously a vampire, like, you dumb idiot? And this one's like, they just look like normal people.
Now, I'm not sure when the graphic novels came out, but the show, Preacher, definitely has some, is definitely paying some homage with,
I think those graphic novels started in the very late 90s, like 98, 99.
Yeah, so even that would have been probably largely inspired, because Cassidy's character on Preacher, the way that he hides the sunlight, the way, like, he kind of smokes, you know, out in daylight, like, it all looks very similar. Like, I think there's a lot of inspiration.
Yeah, well, and going into this movie, you know what you're getting, right? You know it's a vampire movie. Yeah. And so the discovery is not you discovering it's a vampire movie. It's watching the main character kind of discover what's going on. And one of the scenes I love is him trying to go back home the day after, you know, he's been turned, and it's that night, and he's trying to eat a snack and just vomiting it up, and, you know, a cop pulls him aside and kind of pities him enough to give him a few dollars to send him home.
Yep.
And ultimately he just can't, because, you know, he knows something's wrong. Yeah.
He's too sick. Well, I love, too, like, right after he gets turned, when he's, like, sort of stumbling across the field, like, towards his house, and you just see, like, him steaming, like, as the sun is coming up, and, you know, at that point, like, he was just bit, like, 15 minutes before, so, like, it's kicking in already, and I love I love that scene too, because like you see him sort of stumbling across the field from the distance, like you see his dad and his sister like watching him, and you see the fucking Winnebago coming from down the road, just like tearing down the highway, and then they just swing around, and you see somebody lean out the door like covered in blankets and just grab him and pull him into the Winnebago, and then he's just gone. Like, I love that shit. It's so fucking cool. Mm-hmm. I also love the idea of just like vampires traveling around the country in a Winnebago. Although they ditched the Winnebago pretty quick in this movie.
I like that about it, because they ditched the Winnebago and
we see
light
them flipping cars a couple of times. Mm-hmm.
But they light the Winnebago, and like some things happen, and they go to the bar, and we'll touch on the bar more in a bit. But when they leave that place, like they just take one of the people's cars from the bar, and they're out driving and like putting tape up on the windows like as the sun is coming up.
Spray painting. Spray painting the windows.
Yeah.
Black.
Well, it's clear that they've been doing this so much that it's just routine for them, almost mundane.
But also like to play it like so close, you know, like so haphazard too. Just like, what if you run out of tape? Are you just going to like pull over in a blanket, you know what I mean, for like 12 hours? Like, especially when like the crime scene is like right behind them. It's so reckless. It's so like haphazard. And I adore that, because one of the glamorous aspects of outlaws is that they're so close to death, you know? And
they're living on the edge.
Yeah, they're living on the edge. And that these vampires are doing the same thing. They joke about playing Russian roulette. You know, like they've been alive so long that they have so little value for life. And not just other lives, but their own. It works so well for outlaw characters, you know, that are immortal. There's only like one thing that can kill them, and like they can pretty easily like just take their time a little bit more, be a little bit more cautious about it, and like be fed and in cover well before the sun comes up. But no, that's not their style. Like that's not their way of life, you know, like it's reckless. And it's so cool, like that they're immortal characters and how little they value their immortality.
Well, I mean, when you've been alive for hundreds of years, you got to do something to keep the adrenaline going, right? You got to live on the edge. You got to be close to death to be able to feel something.
Exactly. And like even more so for them than like your average outlaw character that already has that mentality too. It's the kind of genre crossover that I would pretty quickly just like sort into the pulp. You know, it's like, okay, cowboy vampires, you know, robot cowboys and aliens, like kind of thing.
I think it's
you don't expect it to be well done.
I think it's saved from being pulpy because like it's not set in like the Old West, which like those kinds of pulpy movies are fun. Like I'm not saying that would be a bad thing, but like this film is set in present day for when it was released, like the late 80s. So like it's a Western, but it's not like cowboys in the traditional sense of cowboys, you know. That keeps it a little bit more grounded, keeps it from being like too pulpy. But
I love how they play into tropes of Westerns nonetheless, though.
Yeah, totally.
You know, they take the contemporary setting and then kind of lean in certain areas. You know, early in the movie, we're introduced to May, and he brings her out to the horse stable, and the horse is immediately scared of her because it
can sense that she's a predator.
Yeah. Later on, we get some scenes with horses that are used very intelligently, knowing that information from before. The bar scene is another great example of like horror tropes taken and recontextualized in a really interesting way.
Then there's the shootout later at the bungalow. There's almost a sort of duel between Caleb and Jesse towards the end too. But like it's like playing off all these typical tropes of Westerns and then kind of subverting them with like a horror twist. And also like making them feel more modern. Obviously the duel at the end doesn't really happen. Caleb just like runs off because he doesn't have a gun and he knows that he's outmatched. So
all we needed was just a shot.
Right, exactly.
You know, all we needed was to see it. You know, like the standoff like
in the middle of the road, and Lance Henriksen's got his fucking cowboy duster on. He's got his 6-shooter. Caleb's wearing the cowboy hat, and he's got the one spur that Bill Paxton gave him earlier. So,
and it's cool because the film still ends in a type of standoff.
Yeah, totally.
Like, very much so, and we can touch on that in a bit. But
yeah, we don't need to get there quite yet.
It's cool that it still gives you that, just in a different form. And so you get the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
And because, if the movie had ended there, it would have been dumb and gross.
It's definitely a Western, just not... It's not like a spaghetti Western. It's a little bit removed from that sense of camp that in, Italian films in Giallo that we've been talking about the last couple of episodes. This is a lot more grounded, but still really fun. Fucking Bill Paxton is the best. R.I.P. to a true fucking legend.
Yeah, he totally steals the show in this film.
Absolutely.
Every scene that he's in, yeah. I love the little... it's treated as like a throwaway line, but when they're burning the Winnebago... Bill Paxton says to Lance Henriksen, "Hey Jesse, you remember that fire that we started in Chicago?" They've been around so long that they fucking started the Chicago fire that burned the whole city to the ground.
I always enjoy like vampire narratives where the characters have like one-off liners like that. It's a treat. It's just a fun way of like world building.
There's another great one where Caleb asks Lance Henriksen like, "How old are you really?" He's like, "Well, let's just put it this way. I fought for the South."
Yeah. we lost.
Yeah.
That was really fun. Yeah, kind of a like spoiler alert. Like we fucking lost. Some funny shit, man.
Can I just say I love Lance Henriksen's rat tail in this film?
Yeah, bro.
Just
he's
the little
great.
braided rat tail.
Yeah, you only catch it once or twice.
Lance Henriksen is gotta be for me like top 5 character actors.
Oh yeah,
like,
he's incredible.
He's been in so many fucking movies, and not all of them are good. A lot of them are bad, but like every time Lance Henriksen shows up, I just love him.
Yeah, he's up there with Rutger Hauer as one of the OG kind of great.
True.
It's just like you're off to a great start with those like that fucking badass cheek scar. Like the cheek scar is so fucking badass.
Speaking of Rutger Hauer, this movie gives me a lot of Hitcher vibes as well. They're from the same era and similar settings.
Scores as well.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, we should absolutely mention that Tangerine Dream does the score for this movie, which I had forgotten about. This is my first time seeing this movie in like 5 years, probably.
When that like, I'm so glad too. They make it a point to credit at the beginning too. Where there's,
I mean, you always
like,
do when you have Tangerine Dream or
you
Goblin. It's always you always do.
You have to, and I was just dancing in my seat because it was already like I already knew I was in for like horror western, and then it's like, wait, Tangerine Dream is doing the score? Because like I fucking love Tangerine Dream, and like, oh man, what a gift, what a little gift. It does a great job of capturing what I was talking about like 2 podcast episodes ago too. Like it's got the 80s synthy, and since Tangerine Dream almost more ethereal stuff, but you get those riffs and those lines, often on electric guitar, but still very very western, dung, 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 kind of rhythms, and it's perfect. The electric guitar, I think, was a really good choice. Like, I think like acoustic would have been really fun, and I think you still get a little bit of that. Hard to remember, but the electric guitar does a much better job of saying like rainy nights, which this movie has a lot of, or at least that much rain, but there's a lot of wet streets with the neon lights, and it works so well.
There's a lot of scenes where there's like thunder and lightning, but no rain. I was actually reading earlier today that apparently there was like I think this was shot in Arizona.
Checks out.
And there was actually like a really bad drought like during the entire production of this movie. I think production was something like 40 days, and it didn't rain at all during the entire production.
Wow.
I wonder if they weren't allowed to use like a rain machine in that case, just because water conservation.
Yeah, I wonder. I mean, it almost makes you wonder how they got away with as many explosions as are in the
Dude, honestly,
the
with a
last
drought
act
like
of this
that,
movie.
yeah.
I mean, I guess none of those explosions take place anywhere near like flammable foliage or anything.
But still, with that kind of a drought.
Yeah, like if something had caught fire, like you need to conserve water, you know, to try to put it out.
Because that semi-explosion is outrageous. Like,
it's massive.
Yeah, again, like James Cameron,
awesome.
like 80s James Cameron-esque, fucking fantastic.
It's great, because like the movie has such a great payoff in the third act, because like the first couple of acts are relatively slow, not boring, but like, you know, even though like Caleb gets bit within like the first 10 minutes of the movie, and like we're introduced to all our characters, you know, within the first 15-20 minutes of the movie, there's a long period of time of like Caleb sort of coming to terms with his transformation and like fighting it and not wanting to kill, but still having the hots for May, you know, and there's a lot of kind of like sort of listless wandering in like the first half of the movie. But it pays off.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of setups and payoffs in this film. And I think you often see it with more confident, experienced directors, which is why it's all the more impressive that this is a debut feature, because you get so many things set up in the first 45 minutes or so. And to see them all get paid off pretty well.
Yeah.
You know, there's no unnecessary scenes in this movie. It's really tightly paced for the most part.
Absolutely.
From the Winnebago scene when Caleb's family sees him getting stripped away and that, you know, setting off the drive of the film, to
Literally.
the horse being set up, to the big rig scene where, you know, Caleb is first
My favorite example.
being pushed to kill someone for the first time.
Yeah, so I was mentioning that during the film, before we dig into that usual spiel. I don't think like anything we've said so far, like what the movie is or whatever, is like would really hinder viewing of the film. But I would highly recommend this movie. You know, spoilers ahead, I guess.
Yeah, we've been kind of all over
fair.
the place. We've talked about things that happen at the end. You know,
Yeah, we've touched on it.
once again, it's a 30-something, 35-year-old movie.
I don't think there's a drastic twist in this movie that's to be spoiled, so I don't think you have to worry about it too much. But regardless, if you want to go into it blind, it's a strong recommendation from the three
Now's
of
a good
us.
time too. But also, like, yeah, not the kind of film that I would feel particularly spoiled.
No, I mean, I think somebody could tell you the whole story in a nutshell, and you would still have and you'd still get a lot out of watching it, because it's not about like the narrative twist. It's just the execution of a good story.
But I will say, in that respect, one of the big points of legitimate tension for me was figuring out whether or not the protagonist was going to stay a protagonist. I was pretty earnestly on the edge of my seat throughout most of the film, waiting to see.
Did you think they were going to kill him off?
No, I never thought. No. He was the protagonist. I didn't think they were going to kill him off, but whether or not he was going to like take a life, whether he was going to like take that step into evil, you know, into becoming a vampire and committing, and not knowing whether he does or not dramatically changes like the expectation. And for me, like, I was very earnestly tense. It was cool. I was very torn because like part of me wanted to see him be good, because that kind of rarely happens in vampire films and the like our protagonist usually like succumbs to the blood sucking part fairly early on. At the very least, they find an alternative. So,
which he kind of does. May lets him drink from her
at the beginning, yeah, and so like
a couple of times,
and I didn't know if like how long they were going to keep holding that out for. Yeah, it really did it for me in that respect. Like not knowing, I was pretty anxious about that in a good way. Oh, and the other side of that is I'm also watching a horror movie and I want to see some kills. I want to see that vampire action.
Yeah.
So
sure.
I'm nervous for our character. Like, you know, like I want to see like maybe he won't take the plunge. Maybe he'll be like a good cowboy. But on the other hand, also, I want that violence. I'm watching a horror movie. Like I'm excited, for the kill. That's why we're watching a vampire film. It was really good tension in that respect, because like, either way, I think the payoff would have been fun. But
well, I love that.
It's very gratifying for me.
I love that they kind of like pull their punches until the bar scene. Like there are some kills before that, but they either happen off camera or we see like one of the vampires like go in for somebody's neck and then it cuts. It doesn't like get really gory or anything. Like it's pretty restrained until they get to the point where Lance Henriksen is like, either Caleb kills tonight or we're gonna kill him. Like, we have to see if he's one of us or not. And they go to the bar. And then that scene is so prolonged and it's so violent, too. And at that point, they don't pull any punches. There's no more death off camera or flinching away from it. And it's like, that, I think, makes the impact of that scene so much more effective, because we as the viewer, knowing that this is like a horror movie, like a vampire movie, have kind of been deprived of that up till then. Because that bar scene happens like fully halfway through the movie.
Yeah, it feels like a turning point of the film, because the film kind of really kicks into gear at that point.
Ramps up in a big way from that point.
Doesn't really let up for the rest of the film, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think it's so well done, because what I love is we've had the time to introduce all the characters and get kind of their unique quirks with each of them, and then you see this happen and you see all of that put into action, essentially.
Yeah.
You see Bill Paxton
just really shines
chewing the scenery.
That is his scene.
One of my favorite shots in the film is the shot of his boots walking along the bar, like crushing all the drinks,
kicking
beer kicking the
stuff,
glass.
Yeah,
because like he just like steps on like the shot glasses and like cracks them under his feet
as the bartender,
like while he's walking, and it makes him look like so powerful.
Yeah. As the bartender in the same shot is like backing away and like fumbling to reload his shotgun.
It's so beautifully framed, because like the bartender is in like the left third, like walking backwards, like trying to load a shotgun, like you said, and then like Bill Paxton's legs are in like the top right, like walking along the bar, and then like the bar is along like the bottom third at an angle, so we're like tracking back and down, and like as he's like cracking each of the cups as they like come into view, and he steps on them. Like, it's such a beautiful shot, and this movie is to the gills with little cinematic like gems like that.
The shot is on his feet and his boots, which he then uses to kill the bartender when he reaches the end of the bar. He slashes up his neck and his face with his spurs.
Yeah.
So it's a very cool lead up. I mean, I love the beginning of that scene when they first come in and like sit down at the bar, and he's like, Bill Paxton's like trying to instigate a fight with the dude at the bar. Like, he purposely knocks over his shot glass, and he's like, "Oh, all right, I like you. I'll give him another one. Now you gotta pay for that." And then he like takes it and drinks it,
and then spits it in his face.
Spits it in his face. Yeah.
And it's such like a fun recovery when like what does he do? Like he dips his chin like in the beer
in the beer
to win the guy back over, because he's just like, "Oh, sorry, well,
did I ever tell you the one about Buffalo Bill?
Yeah. That's right.
He dips his chin in the beer and gets like the suds all in his chin.
Like he has a sud beard, like he's an old prospector. So he makes an old joke. He's like, "I like you, bartender, get him another beer." And then he sips it. And he's like, and he's paying for it.
Yeah.
And then like the music drops again. It's so good. Like, yeah, like the way like it's a little roller coaster of emotions there. It's so much fun. A lesser movie would have stopped. Like, already the Buffalo Bill bit is such a good way to end a dialogue like exchange. It's so funny. I love that. And he has him punch the protagonist, and it's very Fight Club.
Yeah, Bill Paxton uses Caleb as like a shield to like when the guy's trying to fight him, like he's moving him around and like having him punch him,
trying to get a rise out of him,
because he's trying to get Caleb so angry that he'll finally kill somebody, which, once again, he doesn't. Like, the scene ends with the last guy like diving out the window, and they're like, he's yours, go get him. And you know, he chases him for a little while and catches him, but he still won't he's still unwilling to pull the trigger and kill.
I love how that pays off though in the next scene.
Well, yeah, because he lets the dude go, so that's how so the dude obviously goes to the cops. So they find them, and that instigates the shootout at the bungalow, which is another fucking awesome scene. Like that's fucking straight out of a Western.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, I love the bar scene so much, but the shootout scene is probably my favorite sequence in the film because it's so well shot. I love how, you know, you have the fully draped out room that's just getting shot up, and you see beams of light going through,
from the
and
holes,
you know, contextualizing these beams of light as dangers in themselves. You know,
they burn the vampires where they touch them. That's one of the things that I think this movie does so well too. Especially a lot of more recent vampire movies, basically since the advent of CG, I never feel like vampires like burning up in the sun is like painful. You know what I mean? So often it's done like they just sort of like evaporate or disintegrate or whatever, like it's so quick. But this movie, like, it really feels like the sun hurts.
Well, whoever did their makeup did a great job of like really emphasizing the charred, dry skin.
Yeah.
And you know, that is really elevated by just the general heat of the location. You know, it's a sweltering southern rural area, and that just kind of pushes the heat even further.
Yeah, it's the desert. Like I said earlier, like it's a good hunting ground for vampires, but also at the same time, not a lot of shade in the daytime.
No, and I'm sure the cast all felt like vampires as well. Like there's that kind of a drought, you know, in the Arizona heat.
Well, and also most of the shoots were at night too, so I'm sure they got pretty nocturnal during the production of the film. But like, yeah, man, like the beams of sunlight coming from the bullet holes and stuff, like it really does feel dangerous because like we see how badly, you know, the sunlight burns these characters, and like it feels painful. Like you mentioned, like the charring on their skin, like it looks like wet and raw. And you know, Caleb kind of briefly wins them over by going for the van. Like he jumps out the window wrapped in a blanket and basically sets himself on fire to get to the van so he can crash it through the bungalow so they can all hop in and get out, which is a fucking great scene. True cowboy shit.
True. Truly.
Yeah, and it's so strikingly shot. The image of Caleb running to the van with a cloak that's just on fire just sticks with me.
Man, the effect is so good too, because like he's still burning like as he gets into the car. Like you can see like through the windshield of the van that like he's still on fire. So yeah, it's awesome. It's like it once again, like it looks so fucking painful. It just makes me think of like Blade 2, which is a very different movie, and I love it for different reasons. But you know, like the vampires in that, like they just kind of like explode, you know. But and then
it's like a CG like skeleton explosion.
Yeah. Well, and then too at the end of Blade 2, where the love interest is like bitten or whatever, is mortally wounded, and she asks Blade to like take her out so she can see the sun one more time, like as she dies, and she just kind of like beautifully disintegrates. You know, it's very poetic and sweet and whatever. It's like not this movie. That shit fucking hurts. Like they get all crispy and shit. Then they
do blow up. They do blow up
though.
Like that's the thing though. Like they blow up and it rules.
Do blow up,
but here it particularly rules because it's practical.
Yeah.
Not in a realism sense, but in a like in a film sense, like it's done practically with a real fucking explosion.
Yeah,
you know, whereas in Blade, like I mean, there are way more kills in Blade, to be fair. But in Blade, it's CG. That hasn't aged. Well, it hasn't aged well, and that it looks bad, but it's also, I think, aged well because it's hilarious to look at. But no, this film, like, far better in that sense. Yeah, they just detonate. And it's cool too, because like when they really get into the heat after they've been smoking for a little bit, they
fire.
Ignite.
Yeah,
and it feels like they're smoldering. And so when they finally boom, like it looks like, you know, they go off. It works. Like it does kind of feel like a long fuse. Super cool, and it's not overdone because it's only at the very end of the movie you learn that they explode. It's like the last scene,
pretty much.
Yeah, and it's where in the movie I'm very happy with a person exploding. If they had just kind of done it like early on,
it would have been weird if it had happened earlier. But like at that point in the movie, like it's really ramped up. Like we've gotten into like full action movie territory.
It's the climax,
so it's like, yeah, okay, it's time for people to just explode. Why not?
Yeah,
you know?
fuck it. We're here now.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, but before that, it does such a good job of pulling its punches and not getting like so heavy into like vampire fantasy, but you gotta have them blow up at the end. You know, that's
you gotta end your movie with a bang.
Hell yeah.
Literally. Yeah, exactly.
Now that we're well into spoilers, this is another thing I'd mentioned, I remember, on the Forever Purge episode, and that is more good cowboys. I wanted just a good cowboy character. I like that in movies. Now, again, I'm fairly progressive in the rest of it, but still, goddammit, I like a good cowboy. And like modern movies often like have a need, and it's one I also agree with, like to depict cowboys as shitty, racist, whatevers. And it's like you can have a cowboy, you can do it. You know, like it's okay to have like a good cowboy character who, you know, is just a rancher. Those people do exist. And it is really cool to get that in this character who's just a good old fashioned cowboy character, who cares in the right ways and doesn't want to take life.
He doesn't want to take life. He is pretty rapey at the beginning, I must say. When he first encounters May, when she's begging him to take her home because she knows the sun's coming up. He doesn't know what's going on yet. You know, he fucking stops the car in the middle of the road and takes the keys out and, like, puts them down his shirt. And he's like, you know, maybe I will take you home, but you gotta kiss me first. And that's when she bites him.
No, he has that coming.
Yeah, and he has that coming.
He has that coming, for sure.
He has that coming. He's
which is another reason, too.
He's certainly not a perfect character.
No, and he wasn't even necessarily a character that, like, I related with that much. It was more just by, like, expectation for, like, the good of man to prevail.
Yeah.
And
well, that's the thing. He's not really, like, a heroic character or anything.
He's just a guy.
Like, he does try to go out and save his sister at the end, and in that sense, like, has a moment of heroism. But, yeah, like, he's just a dude.
Yeah. Which
like,
is, I mean, often, like, your best heroic characters.
The standoff, like in the standoff, like with Jesse in the road there, like he does just sort of like take off running because Jesse's got a gun.
So your best, I think, often like your best hero characters are average people with like something great.
Yeah.
Or in this case, terrible thrust upon them, right? So, like, he's your average guy, and that's why, like, he has to learn how to become a hero. That's very George Campbell. Like you have to, you know, like, he has to make a mistake and try and correct for it and the rest. But, like, no, I do like it, and you're absolutely right for bringing that up. At the beginning of the movie, like, that's a fucking shitty thing to do, and that's putting it lightly. And him getting the ultimate comeuppance for it is excellent.
Yeah.
What I love about it, though, is it really makes you uncertain about his trajectory throughout the film. Mm-hmm. You don't know if he's going to integrate with the vampires or if he's going to go in the path of being a heroic character.
And the vampires don't either.
Well, the great turning point is after he saves all of them, you know, they hole up in a different motel and one of the vampires comes across his sister.
Yep.
And I think rediscovering his family kind of sets his path where, you know, otherwise he probably would have stayed with the vampires.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, like, that's the first moment of camaraderie that he has with all of them. Like, they've all been mistrustful and, like, downright violent towards him up till this point, except for May, you know, who's in love with him. But, like, he put his life at risk to save them in the shootout scene. And so you get, like, this... just these few minutes of we're like, hey, you know what? maybe you are one of us. You're all right, kid. You know, Bill Paxton gives him one of his spurs. Like, yeah, you know, you've earned this. And it's like, it does feel like at that moment, he is part of the family. He's part of the group. But, as you say, just by happenstance, they happen to be at the same motel where his little sister and his dad are looking for him, and that's the jolt to hit the remainder of his humanity. And it's also because they try to kill his sister and his dad too.
Well, see, it was perfect because for those who haven't seen the film, one of the outlaw vampires is a child.
Yeah.
Who's like 8.
Or is in a child's body.
Yeah, he's like 8 to 10. And
it's implied that he's probably the oldest out of all of them because they all call him Old Man.
Yeah, which is great. And
which has been done before, but
plenty of times.
Still, always a fun trope.
Indeed. And let the right one in. You know?
Yeah, totally.
It's a good example. But he's the one. He's walking out and about. So he's the one who you know, essentially looks like a child or is a child, depending. Not a debate I really want to have. And he's walking about, and we see the little sister who's about the same age at the drink can or vending machine.
Yeah.
Drink can machine, whatever. She's at the vending machine.
It's not wrong.
And
it is a drink can machine.
I'm gonna be real. I did not realize it was the sister because the happenstance for me didn't click. I was already mortified because like, oh my god, this character has like already made it clear that like he feels kind of isolated. Like the vampire kid is like already made it clear that he feels like isolated and lonely. Oh god, is he gonna like kill this kid? Like the tension was very high for me already.
Well,
and like him bringing
her
back,
it's worse than that because
and like being so predatory about it was.
Well,
just,
yeah, that's the thing.
yikes.
He wants to turn her, so he has a companion because he knows that the only in his body the only real companionship he can ever have is from another child. Because even though the other vampires call him Old Man, they still treat him like a child. Like Jeanette Goldstein's character, like when he comes in and like sits down with her at the TV, she's like, you look at me when I'm talking to you, you know, like she talks to him like a kid. So it's like extra skeezy because he's not trying to kill Caleb's sister. He wants to turn her so he can like have another child vampire.
It's so fucked up and horrifying.
The implications of that are really nightmarish because like as he himself says, like he has the mind of an adult in the body of a child. So like,
not great.
His fixation on like this 8-year-old girl is very unwholesome.
Very and mortifying. And so when the brother comes in and she hugs him, I was like met with like so much relief at that realization that, oh my god, you know, like it's the sister. Okay, right, of course it is. Of course it's the sister. To see those events play out was like really cool after that. And I like it in particular too because I feel like even if it wasn't his sister, like that scene would have worked very well. Because the protagonist would have still been put in a position where like they're gonna kill a kid. Like how is he gonna respond?
Yeah,
it works beautifully. And then like for his dad to then also be brought into the room and for them to feel like this really great like kind of Mexican standoff.
Well, yeah, one of my favorite moments of the movie is when he shoots Lance Henriksen in the chest, and Lance Henriksen coughs up the bullet and puts it into the dad's breast
right back
pocket,
into his
pocket. Yeah, that scene rules. Then Caleb is basically forced to make a snap decision, like his birth family or his quote-unquote new family, and it seems like a pretty easy decision, because at this point he hasn't been with them very long, and they're just now starting to like him, so he's like, no, I'm gonna go with my, I'm gonna escape with my dad and my sister. I do want to talk about what comes after this, is when they cure Caleb, because it's my probably one minor complaint with the film, because I really like it otherwise, but I do think that the cure for vampirism in this movie is a little bit too easy.
Let me tell you something.
It's not as stupid as the cure for vampirism in Daybreakers, but it is,
frankly, by miles.
I mean, I mean, it's much simpler than that. But like Caleb's dad is like a vet, I think.
Yeah, he's like a horse doctor.
He's like a horse doctor. so Caleb basically just like asks him to do a blood transfusion on him, like transfuse him with human blood, and it works, and he's human again.
Which, you know what though? I don't have any problems with it. I'll tell you why.
I just think it's too
First off,
easy.
compared to Daybreakers, it is
Well, yeah, it's much simpler, so it's much way less head ass.
But also, like, okay, so in Daybreakers context, it's simpler. It's so weird. Like, in Daybreakers, it would almost make as much sense. But in Daybreakers, it's like being set on fire and then quickly dunked in water.
Yeah, right. Being very briefly exposed to sunlight a couple of times.
You know, we did a whole podcast episode on how stupid that is.
Yeah, man.
And I still reel every time I have to, like, say those words.
Yeah, man.
Like, that was the big twist of that movie. Oh, my God.
Listen to our episode on Daybreakers.
Sorry if I spoiled it for you, but Jesus Christ. Anyway.
Daybreakers rules.
So, yeah, in this, it's as simple as blood transfusions. But here's the thing, right? If we're looking at realism vampires... You know, again, quotes on realism. But if we're looking at vampires like through a lens of as much realism as you can give them, it could make sense for something as simple as a blood transfusion to work because their power isn't that crazy. They do have like super strength, I guess.
Yeah.
But, you know, beyond that, like it's immortality for the price of like blood. And, you know, they still catch fire in the daylight. I like the idea of, like, if there's still a chance for them or whatever, maybe they can still be turned back. And I like that kind of being, like, a pretty key point of it. Also, it's cool because it implies that these vampires have just perpetually chosen vampirism. Maybe they're not aware of it. It's the kind of thing that they might not have been aware of it. Why would they bother with a blood transfusion?
Never tried, yeah.
Never tried. And possibly, too...
I mean, they seem to enjoy being vampires.
That's the other thing, is like any outlaw, they've chosen the life of an outlaw. It's like their vampirism being a choice. Whether they're aware of that or not, I think is irrelevant. It really, for them, doesn't service their characters either way. Because, yeah, if they were aware of that, they'd still be vampires. And if they weren't aware of that, cool, they weren't aware of it. Like, they'd still be outlaws.
Yeah, there's a seductiveness to being an outlaw, just like there is in Westerns. Like, outlaws can totally choose the straight life in somewhere where they're not known.
That's the whole point.
Yeah.
They're not going to because the camaraderie is so
how many
alluring.
times has that conversation been played out in Westerns and Western-adjacent films, you know? I chose this, you chose this life. That line is a cliche for a reason. And it's cool that they made it apply here as well. Like, they chose that life of being a vampire.
I just think that it's the first thing they try, and it works. Like, I think maybe if they're, and I mean the movie's, you know, a tight 95, so like it doesn't really have the room for the fat, but like if they had tried some other things, or there had been some degree of, like, I don't know, research or something, but it's just like literally in the same scene that they escape from the motel with Caleb does with his dad and his sister, like, he sees his dad's like horse doctor equipment in the back. He's like, have you ever done a transfusion on a person before? It's like, it's the first thing they try.
But I think the thing for me is, in a film where they set things up so well, it feels like that's kind of haphazardly set up to be paid off.
Agreed.
If they had set that up earlier, more substantially, I think that would have paid off more satisfyingly.
I have 2 points on that.
Or if, like, Caleb had asked May, like, isn't there an alternative? Like, isn't there a cure or something?
Oh, no, I think that would have been too heavy-handed. Like, here's my piece on it. I don't think that they were seeking a cure. I wasn't under that impression, and maybe I got it wrong. But I was under the impression that he was asking for that because he was wounded, and he's sick, and he needs blood. And so when he asked that of his dad, he's looking for an alternative to feed. He's not looking for he's not looking to try and be cured. I mean, he wants to be cured, but he's just trying to survive. And I thought, like, during that whole scene of his dad sitting down and, like, giving him blood, it's him, like, trying to keep his son alive as a vampire. I didn't read it as him trying to cure his son. I read that as, like, his dad doing, like, a good act, and the good act being paid off as a miracle, right? Like I didn't perceive it as, like, them trying to find a cure and it being the first cure. I read it as happenstance.
I prefer that reading. I don't that's not how I think the film presents it. At least that's not the way that I've ever read it in the several times that I've seen this movie. I like that better. I think that if the film leaned into that a little bit more, made that a little bit more explicit, like that is...
Because, like, the way he's,
that's the goal.
He's, like, writhing around in the van, like, and when his dad is, like, giving him the blood, etc., like, it's the same as early on in the film when he's thirsting. And during all that sequence, I didn't think his dad was trying to find a cure. They never use that word. They never say anything like that. And
well, no, because it cuts from one scene from them. We cut past the conversation that they for sure had. We just don't see that in the film because we don't necessarily need to. But maybe in this case, like, that might have been better because, like, the disparity for me is that, like, if you're hungry, you don't think about injecting something into your veins. If you're hungry, you're trying to consume it. So, like, that's why I don't read it as, like, an alternative to feeding. Like, he's asking for blood to be transfused, for his blood to be taken out and new blood to be put in. Like, he's not...
Well, particularly the new blood put in. Like here's the thing. Well, he's not looking for an alternative. He's looking for an alternative for killing, because that's what he's been doing this entire film. That's why that reads to me, right? Like his whole thing is like he won't kill. He's gone so far out of his way. Like,
but when he's fed before, like, May just cut her wrist and held it to his mouth. So, like, why wouldn't he ask that of his dad instead of, if that was the case, like, if he's looking to be fed so he can heal, like, why doesn't he just ask, like, hey, let me please, I know it's weird, but I need to drink some of your blood, rather than transfuse my blood with your blood.
Couple of reasons for that. One, the only time we've seen him do that is with May, the girlfriend character, and it's super sexual.
It is sexual.
Weird to have the character do that with his dad. The same as
May.
Also, like the blood transfusion thing makes it. And two, they set up that his dad's a horse doctor early on. Like,
they also set up that, you know, him drinking blood is very alluring to him. You know, he almost kills May early on drinking her blood,
which is very traditionally.
And she warns him, you know, you can't drink too much or you're gonna kill me. And so I think they do kind of set that up in that, like,
I think so too.
The allure of possibly drinking actual human blood might be too tempting.
Yeah, sure.
So that puts it out of the running.
I agree with you there, but again, it's like with food and drink, with getting nourishment, you don't get that from injecting it into your veins. You have to consume it. Like, it has to go through your digestive system.
That's not. I mean, that's not entirely true. I mean, like, you can be hydrated through IV drips. Like,
yeah, sure.
you can gain like some nutrition like through that. Like, you can get enough to like get by, and that's what he's doing. He's ailing, and his dad, you know, he's trying to find a way to get by. So I think it works to the degree where, like, I was confused when the sun fell on him, and he was fine, and he was confused too, which I liked. And again, it's not overbaked. No, I can see it not working. No, like, I can see it kind of like not feeling earned.
Yeah,
I think that's fine. Let's touch on one other scene to do with his like sort of long-term redemption, and that's early on. The first time May tries to take him out to see if he's capable of the kill, right? And that's where they hitchhike on a trucker's rig, and our protagonist is struggling to commit, and so he starts making conversation. As May is sort of behind him, kind of egging him on, mostly with body language. And so the trucker starts talking about how to drive stick on a truck and like how to accelerate specifically. Because he's showing off. It feels organic. I just certainly didn't think anything would come of it. The way like he's changing gears and like joking about it, and he's fun, and it's great too because it characterizes the truck driver. Which really helps like with our protagonist's sympathy for not wanting to commit. The way he looks so ill is wonderful. It's the same sort of expression like that our protagonist in Raw has when she's like looking at the finger. Syrupsode on that for like that same sort of like breakdown where like it's almost sexual, you know, and like there's that degree of guilt in it. That's really horrifying and moving, you know. So he gets sick and he has to leave the car, but through his hesitation there like brings out the scene where the truck driver talks about changing gears. So to then have a scene later on where our protagonist like is once again in a truck through happenstance when Bill Paxton is like on the hood of the truck, like ripping bits out of the engine, like, and our character has to accelerate. One of the things the truck driver said was like, if you like, you jackknife, you know, like the front hits the back, you know, and no more truck driver, you know, like, and so like he intentionally jackknifes the truck and leaps out. It's so cool. So like his hesitation bought him that. You know, like which also was a heroic act. You know, it was a good thing that to do.
I really love the setup and payoff for that. They do it really interestingly too, because they have sort of Chekhov's horse in that, like, the horse is used to sense vampires, and then he goes right off of the horse into the big rig, which also gets paid off immediately, which is great. It's really well done. The scene where Bill Paxton is on the hood just ripping stuff out is so iconic.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's been hit by the truck at this point, so he's like missing half of his face,
and he just keeps coming again. How Terminator-y,
like,
right?
Punching through the hood of the truck, just ripping out.
He can't be reasoned with. Like, it's great. Yeah.
And then after the explosion, we see his spur hit the ground. Ding, 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 ding. Yeah,
perfect.
Awesome.
Perfect scene. I mean, honestly, you can't do better than that. Like, I love it too, because like when they're kind of standing off and the truck comes up from the distance, like, I love it too, because like our protagonist gets on the truck, and Bill Paxton shoots the truck driver through the head. He's like, "Ooh, got him in one," you know, or something like that. It's like, it's so much fun, and frankly, like just iconically 80s with like it's all lit with, you know, bright blue lights and smoke, and there's a green neon sign on one of the buildings, and like it's just shimmering like on the wet asphalt. Like, it looks so good. It looks so fucking good, and it's all practical lighting. There's another great scene like that where May and the protagonist are sitting outside the hotel talking, and there's like this wonderful like blue neon strip that goes down the roof of the motel that they're at, and it again just cuts this like really nice angle through the back of the composition and lights them from behind, and it's such a pretty movie about
liberal use of smoke machines as well.
Hell yeah. Can't get too much of that.
You really can't.
I love the just to wrap up the final standoff between Caleb and Jesse at the end, sort of mirroring their aborted standoff previously, but at this point the sun is fully up. They've blacked out the car windows as best they can, but not very effectively, and it's very much just like a game of chicken where like Jesse's gunning the car at Caleb and his sister in the middle of the road, but the sun beats him, and they catch fire and explode before the car hits Jesse and his sister, or
the film,
Caleb and his sister.
Yeah, that sequence I think is really saved in the edit. They do a really good job of not really showing you how close they're getting, so they can focus on like those close-up shots of the characters to really ratchet the tension up.
Well, it keeps cutting back to like Jesse's hands like gripping on the steering wheel, like as they're burning, and
his eyes behind, in the darkness. It looks so good.
Yeah.
Of course, the car that they're driving is like so quintessentially 80s. It's a fucking station wagon.
Yeah, it's like a brown wood panel
station wagon. Like you can't do better than that.
And then they blow that up too, just like the big rig.
Yeah,
it's awesome.
It's fantastic. I did notice there's one shot where it's when the kid vampire, when he's on fire before he explodes. That was like the one instance where I could tell that like the flames, the only instance where I could tell that the flames were superimposed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but kind of composited in.
Yeah, exactly. But even so, they're really well done. Like,
well, I think what saves it too is again the incredible makeup work, because you almost buy it even with the shortcomings of that, just because the skin underneath looks so fucking good.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. No, you're absolutely right about that. And two, like the one thing that often like really draws the eye to composited flames is that they don't move in tandem with the figure. very often. Like, they're not going in the direction that the wind would be blowing or matching like the movements of the character like so well. But here they do. Like, I'll give them that. Like, the only way, like, I think honestly with those shots, they're pretty short too. They do keep them trimmed. I wonder if like your average moviegoer would even notice, because the reason I can tell is because it looks like they wouldn't have, because it's the 80s, but like it looks like how you'd use like a light and layer in Photoshop to do it.
I think people would probably notice it now. Like, it looks just a little bit wrong.
Yeah.
But not, but only a little bit. And again, like, the makeup underneath saves it, and the fact that they keep those shots short enough that, like, they don't linger on it too heavily.
And it is a flaming...
It's an effect.
It is a flaming child, too,
Yeah.
so, like, I think at a certain point you don't want it to look perfect. But to me, it's in the same way as, like, the melting faces of the Nazis in, like, Indiana Jones, right? Like, when they look into the Ark of the Covenant. Like, you know that it's, like, plastic models being melted, but it looks so good. And here, too, like, the flames, you can tell they're superimposed, but I still really liked them because, like, there's a part where he lifts his hand up in the foreground, and, like, it combusts then, and, like, it tracks with his hand. Like, and you can tell it's being tracked to his hand, but like the way that the flames are moving and everything, like I think that they got like an all black dummy on an all black background and like lit it the same way and like moved it or something so it would track. Like, there was like definitely like some real work put into compositing those flames, composited or not. So I do appreciate that. Like, I do think that even still, like, it is a well done like composite shot. And then the rest, like Bill Paxton, when his hand is on fire, like that close up there, you can't tell.
I like that when the kid vampire explodes, it leaves his shoes behind.
It does. I saw that too. But like they don't like get, you don't get a close up shot of it like or anything. Like there's no like shot of like the shoes sitting there like with like the smoke coming out of the ankles.
It's just like a full body shot, and he blows up, and when the explosion clears, the shoes are still there.
Yeah.
But
also like the shot is like at a distance and like it doesn't fully clear. It's perfect. Cause like in like lesser movies or like something a little bit more cartoony. I didn't say lesser, but more cartoony films too, where like they put like smoke in the shoes.
Normally that's played for jokes.
Yeah, and here it almost is. Like,
almost,
it's great.
It's
just
still,
right.
It's still pretty macabre.
Yeah, there's just a little spice on it. Like it's
still
nice.
Pretty macabre.
Yeah.
Well, the film ends with Caleb getting his happy ending because he knows that blood transfusion works as a surefire cure to vampirism, so he cures May too.
You know, I was a little off about this because first off, it's a little bit too storybook, but also I was kind of hoping that the whole reason like it worked is because he hadn't actually killed anyone. I was sort of hoping that he hadn't drank from a human yet, so that prevented
his blood was still pure, or whatever.
So yeah, if I was the script writer, what I probably would have done. I'm not saying this is better. I'm not saying this is better. I'm just saying that this is what I would do. That's an important distinction because I think this film is fantastic. And I'm not suggesting it should be changed, but how I would, I think, prefer to see it is that he tries it and it doesn't work on her, and the film is kind of bittersweet in that they have to part ways, you know, again, and that, you know, she goes off into the dark or whatever.
I think that also would have been better. See, I get to have a Cleveland moment now and make a reference to a show that only I like, and say that in Supernatural, if you get turned into a vampire, you can be cured if you don't drink blood. Once you drink a human's blood, then you're a vampire forever.
Oh, they actually do that on Supernatural?
Yeah.
Oh, good, because I like that. Like that's a neat idea. And it works because again, the whole idea about vampirism is like the exchange of evil, right? You get to live forever and like you get this kind of bougie life, but it's at the cost of like your humanity. Like you have to kill your fellow man to be a vampire. Like you have to drink their blood.
It's a classic Faustian bargain.
Exactly.
You sell your soul for great power.
And so, like, if you're bitten by a vampire and, like, you find a cure for it without ever biting another person or, like, killing another person, you've earned it. It has been earned because you've gone through, like, the biggest trial. That is, like, Christ in the desert. It works really well. Super cool. Yeah.
I agree. I think I would have liked a little bit of a darker ending if, like, the only reason he was able to be cured was because he hadn't drank human blood yet. He'd only drunk from May, who was a vampire, and then, they try the cure on her and it doesn't work and she dies or something. Like she gets burned up and
I think a more tragic ending would have been nice, but I will defend the ending they have a little bit.
Go for it.
I think the final shot they have is really nice in that it's
so nice they freeze frame.
Yeah, it's Caleb and May embracing, but more importantly, it's May putting her mouth up to his neck. And it's
true.
Recontextualizing that. In before, that's a more dangerous gesture, and that's the gesture that turned him in the first place. And to bring that up again in a different light is really striking and really brings everything full circle, I feel.
Well, I like that she says too, like right before the end, like she says I'm afraid. That is a nice little bit of like I don't know if realism's the right word, but it keeps it from being too saccharine of an ending. That being said, it's still a little too storybook for my opinion, but
Here's the thing too, considering like when this was made, that is the kind of thing that I do wonder if like production would have had a hand in as well. I'm not saying they did, but it's the kind of thing like there was an expectation for that kind of ending in the 80s. Like, and up through the 90s.
It's possible.
Like, and even still, it's an expectation that it has to be kind of, like, fought for a little bit. And also, in Western tradition, guy gets the girl. You know what I mean? Like, there is also that element, so it does fit for that respect, too. So, yeah, I find it hard to fault in any way, which is why, like, I did preface, like, 6 times by saying, like, it's how, like, I would probably want to end the movie, but, like, I don't think it's a poor way or wrong way to end it.
I think it bookends it well.
Yeah,
it wraps it up well, especially she turned him, he unturns her. There's kind of a...
It's not an A24 ending.
It comes full circle. All right.
And that's okay.
Let's rate this thing.
Yeah.
Cleveland, I already know what your rating is, but you can go first.
No, I'm going to have to give it a 5.
No surprise there.
I'm just once again, I'm over the moon and excited that this movie exists and that I got to see it and share it with y'all for the first time. And thank you for picking it, Tease.
Yeah, you're welcome.
See everything else.
I knew you'd like it.
Hell yeah, see everything else I said on this episode for why.
Ben, what about you?
Yeehaw! This is an incredible movie. I really love this film quite a bit. There's a few very minor things, but for the most part, this is an incredibly paced film, incredibly acted, really well put together. This is a strong 4.5 out of 5, though on a good day I could be persuaded to a 5. I'm going to give it a 4.5, though.
Solid.
I'm glad you did because I didn't want to be the one stinker on the episode. And it's barely even a stinker. I think this is an incredible film as well. I think that it is, at least for all the ones that I have seen, hands down the best Western horror ever made. One of the best vampire films ever made, too, I think. Again, I have some problems with the convenience of the cure and sort of like the storybook ending, and that hurts it for me just ever so slightly. Enough to, I think it does hurt it enough to keep it from a perfect score for me, but just barely. So it's going to be a strong 4.5 out of 5 for me as well.
I think that's really solid, like, and two, like, I wouldn't have felt bad if Ben had also given it a 5 or whatever, right? Like
if Ben had given it a 5, I probably would have acquiesced and
no. Like the thing about Golden Pods, right, is like they're special because like all of us come together, and like if we do it every fucking time, it's not special, and like we don't. I mean, like, God, when was our last Golden Pod? It's been a minute.
It's been a minute.
So that's fair. Like that's totally fine and fair.
Yeah, but, and the thing is, like, this is a film that on the right day can hit me at a 5.
For sure.
It is definitely up there. And I will even say it's the best in the horror Western genre.
Yeah, totally.
I'd certainly prefer it to Dusk Till Dawn. Which is a fine movie. I have no quarrel with Dusk Till Dawn, but this is a better like horror Western vampire film.
Well,
for that matter.
this movie paved the way for things like From Dusk Till Dawn.
Yeah, it's true.
This and The Lost Boys I think had pretty huge influences on From Dusk Till Dawn. But I mean, also like Robert Rodriguez is a very different filmmaker from Kathryn Bigelow, so
yeah,
it's hard to compare in that regard. Anywho, that gives Near Dark a very strong 4.7 out of 5 pods, and definitely a resounding recommendation from all of us. Next week, it is that time again where we come together to celebrate the passing of another year of this stupid podcast.
Hell yeah.
It is time for our podiversary once again, our 4-year podiversary, and we'll be doing, as usual, an original versus remake, but also as usual, I'm not going to tell you what it is. You're going to have to wait and be surprised, but whoo boy, I know I say this every year, but whoo boy do we have a good one for you this year. I'm very, very excited for the next 2 episodes.
Same.
So stay tuned and come celebrate our podiversary, our 4-year podiversary with us next week.
Before we get into a sponsor, I had a question for you guys. Kind of akin to your question last week, Ben. I'm a big Hollywood executive, right? And you're directors. And I have just given you a decent budget to remake this movie.
Oh.
I know.
I don't want
Near
to.
Dark. It just has to be that. How do you do it? How do you do it respectfully? Because that's the thing. That's the question, right? How do you do it respectfully?
I mean, I think the most respectful answer is I give them back their money and say no thank you. I think that's really the most respectful answer. Because like my biggest problem with the film is the storybook ending and the easy cure. So I guess my answer is I just do the same thing again, but give it a little bit bleaker of an ending. Like, maybe the protagonist can't be...
Oh, like Pet Sematary.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, God.
That went well. Yeah.
The protagonist can't be cured. He tries, but it doesn't work, and he sacrifices himself to save his family, to kill the outlaw there.
Yeah, I think if you had to remake this, if you had no choice but to remake this, I would say you take the horror film and recontextualize it, where this film is more Hollywood, take it in a much more brutal, nihilistic, even darker direction.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I think that's honestly the only way to go with material like this, because it's done so perfectly. So if it ain't broke...
You know, I would say maybe to take it even a step farther is do it as a true classic Western. Set it in like the 1850s or something like that, and have it be the same kind of story. Unsuspecting young rancher kid meets like a mysterious young woman. She bites him and turns him, and her gang of outlaws like kidnaps him. And then we get some opportunities for like a fucking stagecoach robbery or a train robbery or something, where they're not necessarily after the valuables on the stagecoach, they're after the blood, something like that.
And you know what, I'll go even further and say I'm taking off my filmmaker hat and putting on an executive producer hat, and if I were to get someone to direct this, I would get someone like Jeremy Saulnier to direct a remake of Near Dark.
Ooh, yeah, that would be good. I think he would be a great choice. I think if you were going to do a period piece, like if you were going to do it period piece like the way I described it, Jeremy Saulnier would be a good choice, but I think that right now the undisputed king of horror period pieces, my man Robert Eggers.
Oh, it's true. Yeah. See, that'd be such a different movie. Here's my thought, right? I'm roughly on the same page as you guys. I say the one key difference though is I would possibly not even make it Western. Set it in the 80s still in Texas, but have it just be somewhere else with different characters. They're vampire outlaws, but that's the through line. And you tell a different Western story, because there's a lot of Western tropes that remain off of that, including heists. I think that you could just tell
I would love to see a vampire heist
blood
movie.
center heist.
Yeah, see, that's what I'm saying.
They
rob a blood
bank.
Right.
Yeah.
And guess what? They're
awesome.
held up there till dawn. There you go. So, or till near dark or whatever the fuck.
Fuck that one up.
I know, whatever. But it's funny. But that's what I would suggest, right? If you're gonna remake this film or kind of what's the term?
Reimagine.
Yeah, reimagine this film, a soft reboot. I would have it not have anything to do with this narrative. I would just have it be in this world. Just tell a very different story there. And that way, the events of that story and those sequences, the bar scene, all of that cool stuff remains untouched and unfucked with, right? Because that's the sacred part, right? Why would you redo that perfect bar scene? You wouldn't. It would be a fool's errand to capture
sure.
to capture Bill Paxton and the lighting on that era of camera and all the rest of it. It's stupid. It's a dumb idea. But if you do a completely different kind of Western style scene, it's safe and it's okay.
Here's the thing though. You brought this to us saying if we were given money by a studio to explicitly remake Near Dark. I agree with you in principle to just do something totally different in the same vein. At that point, just call it something different. Have it be its own original IP.
Yeah, don't have it have that baggage.
Inspired by Near Dark.
Well, I think largely I would because it's the kind of thing that's more likely to actually be greenlit because there's a pre-established franchise.
Of course. I mean there's a pre-established title. That being said, if we're remaking Near Dark, then I think it's important to, as disrespectful as it is to remake this movie, there has to be some through line, there has to be some connective tissue other than just the title. Mm-hmm. At that point, if you're not going to do that, if you're going to do something different in the same vein, then keeping the same title is just a cynical branding thing, and I reject that to begin with as well. I
think that the through line would be the world. Right, would be the lighting.
But the world is our world. The world is the real
but there's
world.
the aesthetic is very pure, and that's what I mean. I think if you captured that, you would still be carrying through with the heart of this film.
Honestly, I would be much more excited if they remade Near Dark as a video game. I think.
Oh, I'd play the shit out of that. Yeah,
because if they're changing mediums, then I'm less concerned about them retreading previous territory.
A Near Dark video game. Playing as a vampire outlaw, yes please. Yeah, dude, that sounds super fun.
Anyway, let's do our sponsor and wrap this shit up.
Enough of that.
Point is don't remake Near Dark. This movie exists.
Unless you're making a video game.
Yeah.
I guess.
I personally wouldn't mind spending more time in this world. But I guess I could just watch the movie again. Alright, this episode of Pod People is brought to you by an old friend of the show, Pepperoni Pete. Pepperoni Pete. He's got the meat. He's Pepperoni Pete.
Were we talking about earlier pizza feats? Does Pepperoni Pete have the pizza feats?
Off the podcast, yes. When we were listening to a Fleet Foxes record, and I thought that he said,
Pizza feet.
Yeah, I thought you said pizza feet stuck in your teeth.
In your teeth.
I don't know what the actual lyric is. It's off their last album, but
It's a piece of wheat in your teeth.
God, that makes so much more sense than pizza feet in your teeth.
Yes.
But that's what I heard. I heard pizza feet in your teeth, which is a terrible thing
But
to think
Pepperoni
of.
Pete has those.
He does, and it is a feat that he has the pepperonis.
It's a feet of meat. Those meats in your
Pete.
teeth. Pepperoni Pete. Thanks, Pepperoni Pete.
Just keep on being you.
All right, that'll bring us to the end of this week's episode. If you like the show, the best way to support us is to head over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star rating and a review. And hey, next week, it's our birthday. Give us a birthday present. Give us a 5-star rating.
Or an even better birthday present, go over to patreon.com.
That's right. Subscribe to our Patreon at patreon.com/podpeoplepod.
And if you don't, I'll cry.
And Cleveland will cry.
On the podcast, publicly. Open, weeping tears.
That'll be the whole episode.
And it'll be your fault.
That'll be the whole episode. It's just an hour. It's just an hour of Cleveland crying because nobody loves us. Well, that's not true. Some people do love us, and we're going to give them a shout-out right now. Our honorary pod boys, Sam Simon, Sarah Morris, we know they love us, and we love you guys in turn. And you can join their ranks at patreon.com/podpeoplepod. You can also follow us on Twitter at podpeoplepod and at letterboxd.com/ you guessed it, podpeoplepod. That's where everything is.
Wow. Such good SEO. Look at that. Look at us go.
Exactly. And on Letterboxd, you'll find a list of all the films we've talked about on the show with our average ratings and links to those reviews. So check that out. Follow me on Twitter at SomeSpookySnake.
I'm on Twitter at Mr. Sheets.
And I'm occasionally tweeting for Light Arc Studios. We further putting out progress on It Stares Back.
As we further putting it out.
Here we're putting further puttins with the puttin', and it's coming out. You can check us out on our website lightarcstudio.com, and if you would like, you can join our Discord and check out what's all the latest things we're putting out for It Stares Back. Latest chapter being The Drowned Queen. You can find It Stares Back on Steam, and you should. It's a super fun game. And you can also find my work via DreadXP. I'm right now doing some fun work helping with the puppets on My Friendly Neighborhood. Go and wish list it. It is if you like Sesame Street-esque things, meeting horror. I voting a lawsuit. Meeting Resident Evil. It's a really fun combination. Go check it out. It's a particularly cool game. I'm just over the moon to be helping out on it where I can. And of course, you can also check out Spookware as well, which is fun short micro games with some cute skelly boys as they travel across the land of I think it's like Post-Mortia or something funny. Playing mini games. Yeah, just check out DreadXP. They've got some really rad stuff going on right now. That's it from me.
All right, y'all. Thank you for listening, partners. We appreciate you. And until next time, buckle up your chaps and saddle up your boots and horses. Horsey.